So it's been about 2 weeks since San Diego Comic-Con and all of the big Marvel announcements at Hall H. But I think it's pretty safe to assume that we're all still buzzing about it, right? I mean, they did announce a lot of cool stuff. I mean, you got 9 movies, 5 TV shows, and confirmation that the Fantastic Four and the X-Men are on their way to the Marvel Cinematic Universe sometime in the future. That's a lot of content, there's no doubt about that. But the thing about the Marvel announcements at Hall H is that we already kind of knew about all these different movies and TV shows. We knew Black Widow was getting a solo movie. We knew Doctor Strange was getting a sequel. We knew about all the Disney Plus shows going into this. We even knew about Shang-Chi and the Eternals, the new properties Marvel is going to be putting out. Hell, we even mostly knew the cast of the Eternals before San Diego Comic-Con. Really, the biggest surprises were the fact that Natalie Portman is returning to Thor, this time playing the Jane Foster version of Thor, and Mahershala Ali has been cast as Blade in a future Blade movie. And because you already read the title of this video, I think you can guess what we're going to be talking about today. Not that I'm not excited for Natalie Portman Thor, I think that's going to be a really cool, really fun movie. I mean, I did read the comics that this is based on, so I know it's going to be a good time. I'm not just randomly guessing it won't be because a woman is now Thor. But on to Blade. So real quick before we move on, last year I did a video talking about the original Blade trilogy and how it holds up today, especially when compared to movies like Black Panther. You can watch that here, but the long and short of it is that the Blade movies do in fact hold up and are well worth your time today. Except the third one, you can pass right over the third one. The first 2 Blade movies were some of the finest comic book films around at the time, and they still are today. They had a unique style, a wonderful visual aesthetic, interesting plot and settings, and of course, the one and only Wesley Snipes as Blade. Now, ever since Blade Trinity effectively killed the franchise in 2004, there really hasn't been anything major released with regards to Blade. He had a TV show which existed, that's all I can really say about that. He's had a couple of comics here and there, and he cameoed in some games and cartoons, but other than that, all's been quiet on the Blade front. Until now, that is. These are exciting times, my friends. The Daywalker has returned. Now, when I first heard the news, I'll admit that I was very surprised. Not necessarily that they were making a new Blade movie, although I was surprised about that, but I was mostly surprised that they decided to recast him. And look, that is nothing against Mahershala Ali. The man can act circles around pretty much everyone in Hollywood. It's just that I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a little part of me that was hoping Wesley would come back for just one more go. I mean, he was just incredible, understanding the character in a way few actors in comic book movies really do. Even in Blade Trinity, which he basically sleptwalked through, he still managed to come across as the badass motherfucker in that movie. But then again, I always did suspect that Marvel would want to recast him if they ever did anything with the character. I mean, I even said as much in last year's video, so I'm over that by now. Mahershala Ali will be fine. So I'm not concerned about the casting, especially because they got a great actor to fill the role. But I am still concerned about the overall project. See, the original Blade movies are unlike anything that Marvel Studios has ever put out. There are certain qualities and moments in them that really set them apart from not just other Marvel films, but other superhero films in general. Things that if they were missing, wouldn't really make it a Blade movie. For one thing, the Blade movies were rated R, but they weren't just rated R. These were hard R movies. Very violent, ultra bloody, occasionally sexual, and full of enough bad language to give Captain America a heart attack. These films, especially the first one, were dark films. They were in every sense of the word horror movies. They had as much in common with classic vampire films as they did with contemporary action movies of the time. But the movies of the Marvel Cinematic Universe aren't exactly like that. They're not horror movies, they're not especially bloody films, and as far as I know, they're still the only major PG-13 film franchise that doesn't try to sneak in at least one F-word per film. Now, sure, part of this is because Marvel is owned by Disney, but even before Disney bought Marvel, they were still making fairly family-friendly films. The most risque they ever got was talking about Tony Stark's one-night stands, but nothing beyond that. And Marvel's never really done anything especially scary either. I'm not necessarily talking about horror, but just something scary, a moment in a movie where you're sitting there and all of a sudden you jump and scream. Like, some of the villains are scary looking, but they never do or say anything that makes you, the audience, particularly scared. Also, the Blade movies aren't just violent, they are bloody and gory. They are filled with scenes of Wesley Snipes cutting people in half, turning vampires into basically blood explosions. Blade 2 has full-on autopsy scenes detailed in a way that only Guillermo del Toro can provide. And there is just no way in hell that Marvel would ever do anything even close to this bloody. The most they ever get is a little bit of blood coming out of the nose and from the side of the lip that you see on Tony Stark and Captain America all the time. And I think it's pretty safe to assume that Mahershala Ali is not going to be allowed to say anything even remotely close to things like this.
Are you out of your damn mind?
Go f yourself.
Me, no, you this.
You obviously do not know who you are with.
Kill you, motherfucker, I'll kill you. I'll just enjoy it better.
I was born ready, motherfucker.
And that's a damn shame. So if you haven't gathered by now, I'm having a really hard time trying to imagine how Marvel Studios is going to make a Blade movie. It's so outside of what they normally do that it honestly does not make sense to me. I mean, it actually makes more sense for Blade to be a part of the Netflix Marvel Universe. Those shows are often very violent and bloody and touch upon a lot of serious adult topics. I mean, Kingpin straight up decapitates a guy with a car door. You don't see Ant-Man doing that. But of course, the Netflix Marvel shows are officially donezo. So really, making a movie of Blade is the only option Marvel seems to have at this moment. And it's not like they haven't rebooted characters in the past who had already starred in movies made by other studios. There is precedent for it, and there's precedent for them to turn out pretty good. But here's the thing, characters like the Hulk and Spider-Man and even Daredevil and the Punisher, they've been around for a long time, sure, but there are a lot of versions of those characters. A lot of people have different opinions and thoughts about those characters. The thing about Blade is that the Wesley Snipes version of the character is really the only version that anybody knows. To do something different with Blade would be basically to create a brand new character. Remember now, the Wesley Snipes version of Blade is so prominent in popular culture that Marvel took their comic book character and completely reinvented him to basically be a copy of the Wesley Snipes version. Before Wesley Snipes, Blade looked like this. I'm not saying Marvel needs to just copy the Wesley Snipes movies and call it a day. Obviously not. They need to make movies that are unique and their own thing and that feel like they're a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the Marvel Cinematic Universe is overall a relatively safe place. It's not a spooky, scary place. There are monsters in it, but they're not exactly horrifying monsters. Blood doesn't exactly spill from everywhere in these movies, and as far as I can tell, shit is probably the harshest curse word anybody's ever said in them. Bottom line, Blade needs to be an R-rated movie, and a pretty hard R at that. It needs to be violent, it needs to be bloody, it needs to be kind of sexy sometimes. It needs to be a vampire movie. Now, they are saying that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is going to be Marvel's first true horror movie. That's great if it actually is, but I'm having a hard time imagining what that's gonna be like. I'm having a hard time imagining it being truly scary. If they can pull it off, that's wonderful, and I think it would be a good barometer for how they would handle Blade, but Blade would need to be a different kind of scary. Doctor Strange will probably wind up being a Lovecraftian horror movie, a horror movie that's all about the fear of the unknown and the unimaginable. That is mostly bloodless and should fit into the MCU just fine. Blade, on the other hand, really should be more of a traditional horror story. One that's able to frighten, disgust, startle, and scare through monsters and violence. And to pull this off effectively, you really can't PG-13 this stuff. You can't make Blade a fun, adventurous romp like most of the MCU is. I'm not saying they can't be funny. The original Blade movies were often pretty funny at times, but they're very dark films overall. They're not comedies in any sense of the word. I mean, anything else would just feel watered down, tame, toothless, excuse the pun. And I think that's a big reason why something like the Blade TV show didn't work. It had to adhere to the standards of cable television, and you really can't do a lot of gruesome stuff on cable TV. You can now, but not back in 2006. Now, there is a small chance that a new Marvel-made Blade movie could in fact be rated R. They have said that if they ever make a new Deadpool movie, which, let's be real, they're gonna make a new Deadpool movie, it would be in line with what Fox had done with the character. That includes having an R rating. If that's true, then there's no reason why Blade can't be rated R either. Now, sure, Blade was never the box office sensation or most popular character ever like Deadpool is, so making a PG-13 movie of Blade would theoretically open it up to a wider audience, but that is so the wrong mentality to have. Blade always has been and always will be an R-rated property, and R-rated superhero films aren't a novelty anymore. They have been proven to work most of the time, and that rating would allow the movie to be the horror movie it deserves to be. Yes, I know somebody in the comments is already writing, oh, but there have been PG and PG-13 horror movies, but come on, be honest. All the best horror movies are rated R. It allows the creators to scare us in ways that we could not imagine being scared, in the most gruesome, violent, horrific ways possible. Blade needs that. So I think it's time, Disney, to grow up a little bit. I think it's time to start making R-rated movies under one of your most prominent banners. And what better movie to start with than one featuring a character that everybody already knows and likes? If that works, then think about it. You can make more R-rated superhero movies, you can make your Deadpools, you can make more Blade sequels, hell, you can even bring the Punisher back. And Moon Knight. We all want a Moon Knight movie, and he'd be a great R-rated superhero. You can even call it the Marvel Max line of movies. You have no idea how excited people get when they hear the phrase Marvel Max. Or you could just accept the challenge of trying to make a PG-13 Blade movie. I mean, I wouldn't, but hey, you know what they say.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
What do you think Marvel should do now that it's been confirmed they're making a Blade movie? Do you think they can pull off a PG-13 Blade film? Or are you a sane person and you think that Blade should be a rated R bloody horror film? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. Seriously, like an R-rated Moon Knight movie. It doesn't have to be a horror movie, but like a hard-boiled detective thriller. And Keanu Reeves would be Moon Knight. I mean, for f***'s sake, just make that. Of course, don't forget that we have new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share with a friend who is a fan of the Blade movies and thinks they need to be rated R all the damn time. Or if there's somebody who thinks they can make a PG-13 Blade movie, show them this and hopefully we can convert them to the correct side of thinking. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.